It is my honor and privilege to be talking about mastering tech-driven and tech-adapting teams. This is a work that I have been doing for quite a while, and then synthesize some of the major findings in this particular one. So I've been in the field of project program and portfolio management for more than 20 years at this point. I have established project management and program management office, incorporating both traditional and agile or adaptive ways of working with the Agile Center of Excellence. Besides many of my industry certifications, I also hold a PhD in organization and management from Kapala University with a focus on leadership. I'm currently serving as the global lead of Agile strategy, transformation, and training services with InflectraCON. I have also authored a book called Organized Common Sense. And like most people are, I'm a fan of using movies and games, sometimes in my training. And here is my contact information at this point. There is also a new book that is coming up for me. This particular cover page came just before this webinar, so I'm happy to share this information here. It's called Leadership Unleashed: Game-Changing Insights. I expect it to come sometime, in the next quarter or so. So let's get on to the details over here. There are a few myths that people have articulated to me, or I have observed during my Agile transformation, training, coaching, teaching, and many other services at this point. One thing is there is a huge myth that technology will replace the need for strong leadership. And I have a few slides to talk about this, but I just want to get it out in the open and make sure that we are relating to that. The next one is only technical experts. The keyword here is only. Only technical experts can lead tech-driven teams. In other words, if you're not a technology guru of some sort, or you will not be able to manage the new products, develop services that are coming out that require a lot of technology. The other one is adopting the latest technology guarantees success. And this is a big blanket statement. I've heard people say this, when you want to just get ahead of the curve and adapt these things, be an early mover and do this, and then you are guaranteed success. Well, I choose not to agree with that. But the next one is remote work decreases productivity and team cohesion. Yes, there was a point in time during the pandemic, we moved towards a lot of remote work. And now there seems to be, we don't get to see the people, we don't interact, and, things like that. The nonverbal communication is taking up 55% of the communication, and so all the information is lost, and stuff like that. So then the team cohesion and stuff like that. Servant leadership is primarily reserved for the Scrum Master in Agile. This is pretty much what people say, and I'm using planned ways of doing work or linear ways of rolling wave planning, and so it doesn't apply to me. So these are things that I have heard in technical team development. And many times people even come and say, we are a technical product, and so we have to use Agile. And we don't need to worry about risks. We don't need to worry about stakeholders. This team can do whatever they want. So these are patterns that I have seen over here, and I have synthesized this as myths in leading technical teams. And if you see here, I have slightly changed the nomenclature. Instead of mastering, I'm saying leading. Right? This is fundamentally coming from the Scrum Master thought process that I had, and I wanted to talk about that as we move forward here. So let's take each and every one of those things and divvy up. Okay. So the myth one is technology replaces need for strong leadership, right? So when you look at this, technology supports many things. This is data processing, automation of tasks, tactical decision making as to whether you should do this, not do this, when to do this, and stuff like that. And potentially even look at insights like the patterns hidden that normally are not visible to people, and stuff like that, insight generation and stuff like that. So this is what technology is extremely good at, right? But the question to ask is, does it replace human interactions? right? Does it replace human interactions? When you look at the human interaction, why are we doing this? What makes this the right solution? And, those kinds of systems thinking kind of questions, if you are asking yourself, does it replace the human interactions, the emotions, the empathy, and stuff like that, right? So strong leaders make critical right decisions, create the right environment, and see the unseen in the people. At the end of the day, people is the denominator, whether you are looking at product development, project management, program management, portfolio management, process management. Look at anything over here. People are the fundamental denominator. And we need to make sure that the people are constantly improving. And in order for that, we need to create the right environment. Will technology automatically create the right environment? Just because we have agile, does everybody become agile? Just because we say DevOps, we immediately become DevOps? No. And the right decisions have to be made at the right time by the right people. So this is where you are looking at, will this cause problems towards the end? Yeah, you can create a product and release it to the market, but does it actually create a solution for the people that we are trying to serve? Right? So organizations with stronger leaderships are likely to adopt newer technologies successfully, achieving business goals. There is a goal, a business objective, there is a strategic roadmap, and in the adoption of the right technologies are more often aligned with stronger leadership, right? So technology does not replace leadership. In fact, it complements leadership. It requires more leadership today than ever before, right? So Ginny Rometty was one of the guy who basically said, in the age of AI, strong leadership is more important than ever. Leaders must guide the ethical use of technology, empower workforce, and create a learning culture. I'm not saying anything new over here. These are all things that we have always mentioned. We have always talked about it in our team settings, in our individual settings, in your personal and professional settings, many other reasons. But we are not necessarily operationalizing that within ourselves, right? So to me, I come up with this statement that says high touch is far greater than high tech. I'm not saying high tech is less important. I'm only saying high touch is more important, and that high touch is coming primarily from leadership. And within leadership, management is included, but management is not leadership. Leadership includes management, right? So these are some of the things that I wanted to call out. And some of these findings are coming from well-known researchers like McKinsey and company. So let's take a look at the second one, which is technical experts lead technical teams. Technology is important, and it is going to stay here. We're not going to, get rid of technology because of certain reasons and stuff like that. Technology is important. It will automatically be deprecated based upon newer technology replacing it and stuff like that. We have all seen how, the age-old photography has been replaced by digital photography, and now the digital photography is now getting replaced by DSLR cameras, getting replaced by, iPhones and smartphones and Android phones and stuff like that. So it will automatically go its own phase. But technology is important, and it is here to stay. After all, where would we all be without the internet and smart devices? Right? If these two things are not there, I think everybody will come to a grinding halt, telling like they can do their Google search, they can go from plan A to plan B. All kinds of things are going to be coming into play over here. So technology is not the villain here, right? Now, let's ask this other questions. Are teams made of robots or people? Yes, there is going to be some amount of machine workforce, the robots that are doing the work, or the automation that's doing some work that's replacing some amount of human work that would have otherwise not been possible at a faster pace and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, these teams, when we say teams, they are made more of people. But when you are looking at the people, it's not about technical knowledge alone that comes into how you lead people. It is a lot more than technical aspects of it. Yes, technical aspects will help you, but it's not the only part that is going to help you. So when you look at these kinds of thought processes, strategic thinking, are we doing the right things for the right thing? Right target market and stuff like that. The ethical decision making, when you take a look at the ethical decision making, the concepts of digital bioethics come into play, like beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, autonomy, and all these things are coming up. And then building the talent for the future state that is going to be present. So 2-3 years from now, what are we going to be doing? And in order for that state to materialize, we need to prepare today. So building the talent management and building a pipeline of those existing talents is a leadership responsibility. And as soon as you say leadership, don't immediately go back to this is the CEO, this is the senior vice president, this is the vice president, this is the director, this is the manager. It's not that title. It's like how we internalize leadership, right? And this is the reason why we say, your altitude is dependent upon by your attitude and stuff like that, right? The secret to successful AI, or I'm using AI here primarily because this is one of the major findings from recent observations. But I can replace the AI with any technology over here, and that's going to be pretty much the same. So the secret to successful AI lies in its people and how the interpersonal skills and the cross-functional domain expertise come into play. We are no longer talking about those, the depth of knowledge in one area alone, but we are also looking for the breadth of knowledge in multiple dimensions, multiple cross-functional units. And we have always talked about those T-shaped skills a long time, but we're not necessarily completely practicing this. And the entire spectrum has moved from T-shapes to pie-shape to E-shape skills, requiring more and more depth of knowledge, as well as the breadth of knowledge in multiple dimensions. People should be able to think marketing. People should be able to think customer service. People should be able to think design in strategy. And many other things that needs to be coming together here, right? This is again a Harvard Business Review article that basically talked about what are some of those skills that are really being looked at, even in an AI space. And these are the things that are emerging repeatedly. It's not, you be extremely good at Python. I'm not saying that's not relevant, but more people-oriented skills are coming up, even for technical experts to manage the technical teams. So I'm going to debunk this theory that technical experts are the only people that can manage technical teams. Now, the General Motors CEO at some point in time saying you don't have to be an expert in every field to lead a team. This particular person was primarily an engineer. I don't remember exactly what specific engineering she came from, but that was the forte. But then she was able to actually come and manage the entire team in entire organization. So you just need to know how to bring the best in every one of your team members. That's your focus. Now, bringing it down into a smaller section over here, I basically I've been advocating this. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I want to repeat this. When you talk about what you know is primarily technical skills, managerial knowledge, and, many other organizational acumen and all those things, they don't care about any one of those knowledge until they know how much you care. And that, in a nutshell, is about how you lead, inspire, motivate people. Right? So I always say people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Let's take a look at the third myth, which is more about adopting latest technology guarantees success, right? So when you take a look at this particular one, there are lots of frameworks that exist for managing projects, developing software, building teams, many things. If you take a look at managing projects, there is this Project Management Institute, Prince2, Agile, Scrum, many other frameworks that come into play. I may miss a couple of them. When you look at developing software, there is dynamic systems development methodology. There is extreme programming. There is the age-old software development lifecycle. iterative programming, many things, rapid application development, many things. Same thing with, building teams. When we talk about building teams, the Bruce Tuckerman model of forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning, these things come up. Well, so all these things exist, but just because they exist doesn't mean that, anybody that actually follows that to the T is going to actually be successful. And if you think so, take a look at the agile surveys, and many reasons why projects fail and stuff like that. It's not because of technology alone. Technology is one contributing factor, but it's not the only contributing factors. Take a look at that CrowdStrike that recently happened, the SolarWinds challenge that happened before, the Facebook debacle a few years back. When you take a look at all these things, just because you are adopting the latest and greatest does not necessarily mean that things are going to be a great thumbs up. So why isn't all the projects successful? Why isn't all the software that we are releasing error free? Why are all the teams not productive all the times? When you break these things down, you will find out that there are a lot of problems that we have not factored into account. And I'm not going to go through all these examples over here, but I gave you a few thoughts to consider. Google Glass is a wonderful technology, great technology that is able to, it's a wearable device that can help you do things that are more like the Terminator glass, from the movies like Terminator, where you can see everything. You can look at a product and immediately see where it was made, and many other things or properties of it, or everything else. Great, but it's not ready for the market. Why would anybody want to buy so much? Spend so much money and buy this? And we are in the spectrum right now of self-driving autonomous cars and stuff like that. But then there is still lots of accidents. There are lots of insurance challenges and stuff like that. And so who is looking at the big picture alone? Technology is great, but who is looking at the big picture and bringing everything together? Same thing with the virtual reality. Virtual reality is great at this particular point because I wanted to pilot some virtual reality kind of scenarios for a leadership challenge. But the cost of developing a virtual reality solution for a leadership, class was like running in several tens of thousands of dollars. And when tech people are developing solutions that are based upon AI and stuff like that, what are some of the ethical challenges? If I'm going to have a facial recognition software that is going to recognize me and categorize me as this or that, and I'm not properly categorized, what's the impact? And these are the reasons why we come back and say, yes, technology can help you do this, but at the same time, it should give the autonomy to the end users to figure it out. Right? So lots of ethical challenges still exist. We haven't yet, understood that. So success go through the life cycle, just like the product has a life cycle, from the inception to the growth phase, to the maturity phase and the decline phase. There is a cycle that we are following over there. Right. And the same thing is going to be applicable even in the concept of the Gartner's hype cycle that we are currently calling. And that involves the same points, similar points, like an innovation trigger. Something starts as a potential trigger for experiment and stuff like that. As a result of that, we come back and say, oh, we are going to be in an inflated, expectation spectrum. Oh, everything has to be this. If not, it's not going to work and stuff like that. And then there is this illusion stage. That's not necessarily the case. And, we are normalizing ourselves. And then we are getting enlightened. Like, okay, this is what our expectations are. This is where the reality is. And where can we meet in the middle? And finally, where the productivity plateaus, kind of no more marginal improvement is coming up because of any additional investments and stuff like that. It's a similar life cycle, similar to how the product life cycle has been, working for several years. right? So these things have to be kept in mind in terms of how latest technology is really working. If everything is going to be the early mover advantage and everybody who moved in should be successful, and that's not necessarily the case. Many small business enterprises have failed despite their embracing of latest and greatest with quick decision making and even though with limited funds and stuff like that. So technology is nothing but a tool in terms of the people working together and motivating them. Bill Gates says the teacher is the important person. So tool is going to help you get to some particular area from point A to point B. But which tool did you select? Why did you select? How did you select? And what are the combination of tools that should be worked out? So these are things to keep in mind as we are looking at technology. Like sometimes we may have to take a back seat and see how technology adoption is going. Sometimes we may be the front end leader. I don't know what the answer to your specific organization will be or your specific product will be, but that's where strategy comes into play, right? So as using a tool does not make one technical, using the latest technology does not guarantee success. I've heard people say, oh, we are agile because we are using XYZ tool. The use of a tool does not make you agile, right? So these are things to keep in mind. What is the definition for success? How do you define success in a technical project, in a technical team? And immediately people start gravitating, especially in the agile ways, they will start gravitating towards, I'm going to use velocity as an indicator of success. Velocity is not an indicator of success. Or let's use the earned value management and say that's going to be, these are all status quo indicators, lagging indicators that they say what we have accomplished, not necessarily the leading indicators of how we will be accomplishing. What are we doing to actually move ourselves up, right? The fourth one is the remote work decreases productivity and team cohesion, right? So the whole concept of remote work has existed long before pandemic. Personally speaking, I have worked with many virtual teams. Even before pandemic, I used to have those VHS tapes that were made by our team and then ship it to them physically, where other people will see it and they will have the recording of that team and and ship it to us. And these are long before some of these tools like Zoom, WebEx, or the video collaboration tools was even available. There was not even Citrix at that point, GoToMeeting and stuff like that. That didn't exist. Join Me, nothing existed. No video collaboration ever existed. The only video collaboration tool was the VHS tapes that we can see on the TV. Some of them were monochrome, not even color TVs, right? So while co-location increases the osmotic communication, what is an osmotic communication? People picking up other things and stuff like that and, trying to help each other and stuff like that. That's the osmotic communication, which is based upon the non-verbal communication. Now, strategic initiatives. Let's take a look at this business process outsourcing. That is going to be here forever because it's a business mindset. Yes, there are lots of technologies that have created businesses, like example, Amazon. Nobody went and told, Jeff Bezos that, we really have to have, AWS. That's the only way Amazon is going to survive and stuff like that. It was the experiment of a couple of engineers, right? So technology has now created a new streams of business opportunities. But the concepts of business process outsourcing, where you are able to tap into talents from different parts of the world, is going to be there. Whether you are accessing it for raw materials using earlier concepts like foreign direct investment, or for human capital using process outsourcing, it's going to be the same. And the application service provisions. Nobody is actually creating their own video collaboration tool. They go to Zoom or WebEx or other preferences that you may have. Nobody is creating your own Microsoft Office equivalent, although there is, other tools like LibreOffice and OpenOffice and stuff like that too. So we basically, take some advantage of things where people are experts. And we look at partnership arrangements, and partnership arrangement is the sixth force of, Porter's. Porter had those five forces, and accordingly, he came and added the sixth force of complement, strategic compliance, and complement. So we are looking at that already. When you are doing a frequent flyer, and then you are trading those points to a magazine or a cloth outlet or whatever it is, that's strategic compliments. And when you're looking at 24 by 5, 24 by 7, or round the clock support, follow the sun model and stuff like that. And that is part of globalization. These things are already demanding and already requiring remote work. And this is much before the pandemic. And pandemic accelerated some of these things when people were not following it completely. Right. So why do you think organizations focus, for instance, on application lifecycle management tools, which are called ALM tools? We don't want to look at this is a tool that will track defects, or this is a tool that will have test cases. This is the tool where my requirements are there. This is the tool where tasks are done. Why do we do that? Because we don't want, we are losing the single source of truth, how everything comes together, the traceability, the auditability, the transparency, all those things have to come together, so that we are able to prove and show the evidence that whatever we are doing is meeting the organizational policies, processes, and procedures, which are required by governments and stuff like that, especially if you are in a regulated industry. So that's the reason behind application lifecycle management tool, because it brings people together from different parts of the world. Right? So a Chinese travel agency have actually done some piloted studies where some group of the people were actually working from the offices, and some people were doing remote. And this was primarily in the context of process outsourcing, call centers, and stuff like that. And they found, increased productivity for people that are working remotely, because they don't need to worry about coming to office, baby care arrangements, child care arrangements, elder care arrangements, dog care, pet care, all those things. In fact, I was doing some more research, and I found out that the entire movie Luca that Disney released was completely done during the pandemic. The whole production, the voice acting, everything was done completely in people's home studios, and integrated and released. This was a note that was actually made in the movie itself, and then I did some research and looked it up. Right? So if agile is meant to adapt, then are we truly agile when we fail to adopt technology to enable remote ways of working, and we still force like, okay, we have to be co-located, otherwise we cannot be agile? In that case, we are compromising productivity and team cohesion. So remote work, in fact, accelerates it if only you follow the right model, if only you demonstrate leadership, if only you actually ensure the right tools are used to bring this total cost of ownership and single source of truth and stuff like that. So work is no longer a place that you go to. It's what you do. This is what Satya Nadella said. And remote work can be the future of productivity. So debunking this theory, if we focus on the outcomes rather than the locations, keyword here is the outcome. And this outcome connects with the way the program management, Scrum of Scrums, SAFe, and all those things, disciplined agile, they're all trying to focus on these things, but with different choice of words. So sitting together is not productivity. Just because everybody is co-located and we are all sitting together, that doesn't mean there is going to be high productivity coming up. But engaging with others is, and engagement with others does not necessarily require that you are present. Yes, when you are using the collaboration tools, you may have to actually look up for some non-verbal communication like emoticons. What are they telling? What are they not telling? And many other, ways that you have to pick it up. And this is where we need to actually start investing in the right kinds of tools, which are ALM tools, or right kinds of engagement with the people to make sure that we are bringing people together. The fifth one is servant leadership is for Scrum Master in the agile ways of working, right? So Robert Greenleaf, he's the pioneer, seminal thought leader, contributor for this particular, servant leadership model. And he proposed that model in 1970. This is much, much, much before even Agile was even conceptualized. Agile manifesto was thought somewhere around 2001. But this is like 3 decades before. In fact, Scrum came much before what we all call Agile is, right? So the concept of servant leadership to tie that only with Agile is wrong. Everybody can be Agile. Everybody can be a servant leader. So can one become a servant leader by attending 2 days of Scrum Master class or Scrum Product Owner class? I've seen people. Oh, what does a Scrum Master do? Scrum Master should be, ensuring the Scrum ceremonies are getting done and promoting servant leadership. And I ask people like, okay, demonstrate servant leadership. Tell me more about what a servant leadership. There are 10 elements to a servant leadership. People cannot articulate the 10 important elements that Robert Greenleaf laid the foundation to. These include listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, people commitment to growth or commitment to people's growth, and building the community. These are all the elements of that. And this is the reason why Scrum Master is expected to be preaching Scrum as to how the company adopts Scrum. This is a lot more than attending a 2-day class. In fact, Agile and Scrum is doing a disfavor to servant leadership model by telling, oh, you are a servant leader by attending a 2-day class, and now you just have to practice it. Several organizations, not even doing software development, has practiced servant leadership. One of the classic examples is the Southwest Airlines. Everybody is having the responsibility, the accountability to actually make sure that the customer experience was good. And I can't say how it is right now, but this is how it was positioned several years back, right? So to say that software development is the only one that will lend itself to agile ways of working, and servant leadership is connected with agile ways of working, and therefore software development is connected only with servant leadership. This is all incorrect, hypothesis that people are forming. Right? So while Scrum Master is responsible for walking the talk, demonstrating leadership, servant leadership is practiced by everyone in the organization and the community. If you follow all those 10 things that I mentioned, like listening, empathy, healing, and stuff like that, community building and stuff like that, these are not limited to Scrum Master. So do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants and stuff like that? This is what Robert Greenleaf is asking. If your team members are not going to be all of this, then we are not practicing servant leadership to the extent we can. So leaders build leaders. This is one of the reasons why in the daily stand-up, we come back and say the Scrum Master and the product owner are optional attendees, because the self-organized team should govern itself, because leaders have created the leaders. Right? So let's take a look at fourth industrial revolution technology space. When you take a look at these things, mostly technical people talk about, how components are interoperable, how they are virtualized in, cloud and stuff like that, how things are decentralized so that they can work with different elements like application programming interfaces, like REST, SOAP, and stuff like that, and real-time capability, access to the data, services orientation, the microservices concept and stuff like that, and how things are modular so that you can reuse them multiple times, scale them, and stuff like that. This is the technical jargon that people are using. But most often, these technical jargons are meant for the technical members of the team. But when you take a look at the products and services that it is creating, these are, everybody's forte. Hey, robotic process automation, how do you do that? IoT, Internet of Things, how do you do simulation? Or, how do you ensure cybersecurity? How do you make sure that all the systems that we are creating are working together? Considerations for cloud, considerations for 3D technology, big data considerations, augmented reality. All these things are pretty much, everybody's forte to understand. Yes, there's some kind of a technical literacy required, but the focus here is not on the technical literacy itself, but more about the application of that space in solving people's problems. If none of these things are solving people's problem, what's the use of this technology? That's where leadership still comes in. How we adapt to the technical teams and how we demonstrate our leadership in the technical teams. Where is the world going at this particular point? When you take a look at this, the focus is on more and more remote and hybrid ways of working. Thanks to pandemic, it accelerated that curve. And there is more and more, how do I make sure that the monotonous tasks are being automated using automation technologies, as well as through artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And how do we make sure that we have access to everything everywhere, which is cloud, right? So this is what people are constantly seeking at this particular point, right? And when you take a look at this, there are other problems that are coming into play. There are physical, mental health challenges, as people are working in, remote locations, how are they working together? What are some of the challenges that they face? And, the social inequity problems, making sure that everybody is having the right access to information, right? Practice to, the things that they need and stuff like that. The workplace diversity, equity, inclusivity, in all these things, which promotes the belongingness. Considerations for people that are moving back and forth, should that be allowed? Should that not be allowed? Which are some of those immigration challenges. Trades and tariffs that are being put on the products and services. That makes, many kinds of risks that are impacting our products, programs, portfolios, and stuff like that. And as a result of the financial challenges, look at the world today. Funding, invoicing, many other challenges are constantly coming up. Each and every one of these things is loaded with the risks. Now, this is where the dependencies are. There is not like a simple, solution here. Each and every one of them is constantly, interfacing with others, and every dependency is a form of a risk. And we need to use the fourth industrial revolution technology spaces to actually address these risks. Why are we not addressing them? Because of skill gaps. Because we don't have the right skilled persons in our teams, in our organizations and stuff like that, and they're not making the right decisions at the right time. And as a result, we are finding that leadership level coaching is absent. Oh, we have a scrum master who is supposed to be a servant leader, but we have all these problems, right? So these are the major findings. And how do we bridge the gap? Right? So what the world needs is more and more these challenges that are being addressed at this point. So 85% of the firms will have a cloud first principle, with 97% of the IT leaders expanding to cloud systems. This is a finding. That means more and more data, more and more services are going to be in the cloud. 58% of the American workers at least can work remotely at least once a day. So people are not interested in coming to work all the time. 76% of the IT decision makers will face critical skill gaps, with 36% of them on the business objectives cannot be met because of this skill gaps. And 97% of the organizations have experienced cyber attacks surge at this point. These are all telling tales. So what are these things going to do? That means turnover is going to be very high. 20% turnover is being predicted in the next few years in Gartner. So if you take a look at your team and say 20% of the team is going to suddenly disappear, how will you manage your work? Up to 81% of the employees can work remotely in a hybrid situation, and they will choose to do so. So you ask them to come, you ask them to do certain things. Again, there is going to be a turnover. There's going to be dissatisfaction, disengaged workers. And when these things are coming up, 43% of the employees will lose trust in their organization's leaders to act in the best interest of their teams and themselves. Right? So I have a lot of references to Accenture, Computer Weekly, Gartner, Owl Labs, and stuff like that. I'll put all these references in the next slide, primarily because I didn't want to overcrowd this slide with lots of other information. So that's this information here. So what's the role of leadership? Mention enough about this. I want to talk about the transformational leadership, which is a position that was created by Burns and Boss, and that has been present for quite a long period, like several decades at this point. I should say even half a century. And that is depending upon those 4 I's, and which is individual consideration, making sure that you are looking at each and every one of your team members as an individual, and stimulating them intellectually, motivating them with an inspiration. And they're not going to, do what you say, but they're going to observe what you're doing. And you need to, exhibit that idealized influence. If you ask them to study, you have to study. If you ask them to do certain things, you have to demonstrate that you are doing it already. Right? So these are things that are constantly being discussed in the last several decades. Right? Now, let's take a look at the 4 I's of the technology adoption continuum. I don't know how many of you know these things, but let's take a look at this. And when you take a look at this particular one, there are 4 I's that come up. Intentionality of the purpose. What is the intention with which you are designing your product, service, or result? With your AI, with your technology and stuff like that. Integration of human and AI components. How are all these things working together? What are the shortfalls? What are the merits of using or not using certain things? And how do you implement engagement? This is not like, I'm developing a code. It's more about, how do I bring all the resources, which means people resources and non-human resources like facilities, equipments, materials, infrastructure, supplies, and several types of risk. And how do I collaborate on each and every one of those things? Right? So how do you implement these things? And finally, what is the indication of performance? If you choose the wrong metric and measure the wrong thing, it's useless. Yes, you have metrics. Yes, you are measuring. But you need to measure what matters. So these are the 4 I's that have been present in the technology adoption continuum. And we are talking about the 4 I's in the transformational leadership. To me, that is the foundation. Right? There is also another leadership model that people have used for a long period of time. And I'm bringing that also into the continuum here because context counts. Situational leadership. This is proposed by Hershey and Blanchard, and it's called a situational leadership model. And when you take a look at this, there are 4 foundational development models. Like for every individual, they are going to be D1, D2, D3, D4 according to this. And this is going to be, a very enthusiastic beginner, disillusioned leader, capable leader or a contributor, and a self-reliant achiever. It connects exactly with the Bloom's taxonomy and how the product life cycle curves works and stuff like that. And from a manager or from a technical person who is managing the team perspective, we look at when do you delegate tasks, when do you delegate work to them, and when do you provide them the level of right support. But when do you coach them? And when do you actually direct them to do certain things? And this is all based upon the level of maturity and the guidance that people need. And that's the situational leadership model. right? When you take a look at this and compare what some of the foundational things that other organizations are telling, for instance, Project Management Institute has a PDU talent triangle, professional development unit talent triangle, and there when you look at this, the ways of working is the technical foundations or technical project management aspects. When I mean technical, it's not necessarily the technology aspects of it, like when do you use agile, how do you use agile, when do you use plan driven approaches, when do you adopt hybrid things, what tools to use, and things like that. And then the power skills come into play. The power skills is nothing but the leadership. How do you demonstrate collaborative leadership? How do you ensure that innovation is there? How do you ensure there is a strategy, purpose, orientation, business alignment, and stuff like that? How do you demonstrate empathy, emotional intelligence, and all these elements are coming into play? And then the strategic business acumen, where should the company be? Where should our organization be? How does our product contribute? How does our efforts on a daily basis contribute to these things? And the iterations that we are doing, the rolling phases that we are doing, how does that align to the benefits and the value? And this is the PMI talent triangle. So you can see there is a symbiosis over here in terms of what people are looking for in the world and what some of the practitioners are recommending. So leaders customize their style based upon the individuals and the team, which is exactly what transformational leadership model was also, laying the foundation to, and the situational leadership model is also laying the foundation to. To me, these are the foundations to how you get to even servant leadership. You can't just go and preach servant leadership. So here is my thought as to how you can break these things down. Okay. So my predictions, I had communicated this, attracting and retaining talent is one of the major problems. Training for continuous learning, making sure that people are continuously learning, and automation and quality focus is continuously emerging, scaling agile approaches to project management, and the expenditure that is being spent on the infrastructure, particularly on IT side of the equation. And more interoperable application programming interfaces are coming. So there needs to be scalability and governance oversight on those things as well. And then the prescriptive ways of looking at AI and ML analysis. This is not predictive, this is prescriptive. Okay. Prescriptive goes one step beyond the predictive. And then outcome-based product management, which is something that I already connected before. What are the benefits and values that we are trying to come up with based upon the capabilities and the outcomes? And finally, environmental awareness, climate change and stuff like that. And there's a lot more in the United Nations sustainability goals that we talk about there. And then the creative metaverse, like creating another, pseudonym of ourselves and avatar of ourselves, and having additional work getting done in those areas. So these are all emerging at this particular point. So how do we take these things, and how do we take the leadership things, and how do we make sure that we are able to tell the technical teams can lead themselves, or how we can lead those things? So I put together these four things: the four eyes on the columns and the four eyes on the rows. So I have come up with this idea. So idealize influence, lead by example in the ethical use of that. How do you align the strategy with business objectives? And I'm not going to read everything over here, but creating a culture of the collaborative environments, making sure that there's proper workflows, proper risk management, understanding, more knowledge about resource allocation, resource meaning like not just people, it's also non-human resources. How do you communicate the value of the AI to the larger team, to the larger organization, and what are the lessons you have learned in adopting it, and the connections between objectives, key results, key performance indices, and our critical success factors and stuff like that. Similar idea with the individual consideration. How do you tailor AI adoption to the individual team's needs? What kind of AI-based experiment can you do in your project at this particular point, in your sprint at this particular point? Incorporate cross-functional domains, a T-shape to pie shapes, like role plays and stuff like that. Encourage innovation with technical tools. What are some of the incremental innovation? Not everything has to be radical. Incremental in innovation, like a process change, improvement of a definition of done, automating something and stuff like that. So address the individual. Do a SWOT analysis on your team and say, where do you need to support the team? What are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and what opportunities and threats exist? You need to have that and provide resources proactively to remove the blockers, not after it has happened. So have more preventive action rather than corrective action. That comes with risk-based thinking, which I call risk-driven development. Monitor the fail forward, not fail fast, but fail forward. Fail forward means you learn something and you are making changes. Fail fast means the lessons are learned, but nothing happened. So recognize and reward accomplishments. How do you recognize and reward accomplishments within your team? The intellectual stimulation, challenge the team to think productively. If they are, X in terms of velocity, what can they do to, increase by, 50% more? What can they do to increase the team cohesion and stuff like that? Promote incremental and radical creativity. What can we do differently and stuff like that? The sixth force that I talked about, the strategic complements, use them. Identify how we can reduce the total cost of ownership. Coach on the ethical guidelines. I mentioned this very, quickly in the passing, like the beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and autonomy. And in the AI world, we also talk about explainability. The model should be able to explain itself, and what are some of the hypotheses that you have to prove or disprove the model is working as it is. This is when you are looking at hallucination and drift and stuff like that. And challenge for the performance, like what kind of data is coming up and how did you find out new hidden insights from those things. And even allow them to refine your existing matrices for continuous improvement. And inspirational motivation, demonstrate the talk, walk the talk, motivate the teams for benefit-driven outcomes. Like if I do this, what is the bottom line we are hitting towards the strategy? Make that connections for them and create a sense of pride and purpose in owning the commitments. Motivate the team for multidisciplinary domain, like, walk a mile in somebody else's shoe. Show that to them. Lead the small efforts of innovation. Increase the capacity and the capability for a future state, not for today, but for tomorrow. And encourage teams to share the success stories. If they have to be the PR, how will they talk about what their commitments are, what their lessons learned, or what their recognitions are toward the business machine? So use technology for early trigger warnings and stuff like that. Technology is very good at these kinds of things. So use these kinds of things to actually promote that thought process. And I'm coming down to my last slide over here. The disclaimer here is this is all, my recommendations. So embrace continuous learning and upskilling. We have to demonstrate it, develop the digital fluency in all these areas. The data analytical literacy, we have to understand, how the data much more than we understand the data at this point. The cybersecurity challenges, risk management level thinking in terms of both problem solving as well as in decision making. Focus on the human skills that complement technology, not necessarily, contradict with that. Develop an adaptive and resilient, form of leadership. Ethical foundations, I have to stress this repeatedly. Ethics is very important. Enhance the emotional intelligence, EI quotient, and as well as the cultural quotient. Develop leadership level communication. So leadership level communication is yet another domain that I can talk later. But how do you communicate at a leadership level, in the boardroom level and stuff like that? Those are things to keep in mind. With that, I have basically come to the end of my slide. It's not the technology that hurts others. It's a leadership intent of the person that wields the technology. No technology by itself is good or bad or, neutral. But the way we use it is how it is going to be considered good, bad, or, neutral. So let's take a look at how we are demonstrating these connections, principles and philosophies, so that we are able to lead the team, we are able to lead ourselves, and then we are able to lead the organizations. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you again for attending this presentation, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.